Everybody knows that once you get married, the sex goes down, sex goes away. You guys remember years ago the guy who kept a spreadsheet for the sexual frequency and rejections and all that after the first year of marriage and gave it to his wife and demonstrated that they were having a lot less sex. And of course, there was a ton of outrage against the guy for doing that. But it's not a secret that sexual frequency and quality often goes down in long-term relationships, whether you're married or not, particularly when you're cohabitating, particularly when there's actual, marriage or kids involved. And we also know too that it tends to be women and female desire that drives the decline of what's going on in the bedroom. Now, there's a lot of shaming on both sides as to whose fault it is in general, but we know that the desire from the girl side is what goes away. So today we're going to go into all of that stuff and break it down for you so you understand why that happens, and also so then you can prevent that from happening to you. Hello, hello. All right. Thanks, Yuri. Man, thanks for the $20, bro. That's a good start. Good start on the day. That hopefully will kick my algorithms in play. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Hopefully everyone is doing well and all that. Just got the new year off to a good start for you guys. Now we're going to talk about sexual frequency, relationships, and all kinds of things, right? And so it's an interesting thing. I got like slideshow for you guys. And I've heard let's look at what sex is to a girl and what it means to her. It doesn't mean the same thing to you. So in fact, let's just go right into this little slideshow I got for you guys. I'll share this. All right, so we're gonna do this dead bedroom and hypergamy thing. All right, that's what we're going to cover. Now, there's been, of course, there always seems to be these claims and recent claims that hypergamy doesn't play a role in this. And there's some interesting questions brought up about that. Like, well, I don't know. Some people have said, I've heard comments from people who have listened to other like content creators and whatever that have said, well, I don't think hypergamy plays a role in the dead bedroom thing. And they've brought up some interesting questions, and I have answers for that today too. All right. But let's get into this dead bedroom thing. All right. So here's the thing. First, I want to start off with this. And by the way, if you got any questions, Yuri already started it off, so he already set the standard with $20 Superman. I really appreciate that. But if you guys do a little super chat or something like that, it lets me know that you have a question, and it kicks those algorithms in for me. The more, it's not so much the money, it tells YouTube, you know what I mean? It's one of the metrics that tell YouTube to put my video out to others. This information will save marriages, save somebody's life. Doesn't matter whether you're like a traditionalist Christian person, whether you believe in marriage, don't believe in marriage, or any of that stuff. If you're going to have a long-term relationship, this information I'm going to share is going to save it and save you, because sexual frequency and quality is one of the number one markers for a relationship being able to stay together and be happy and be at a peak level of happiness throughout the course of that relationship. We'll say most of the time. I mean, there's peaks and valleys, ups and downs, but for a relationship to last, past the 2-year mark, past those honeymoon phases, into building a life together, and to do that for 10, 20, 30 years, sexual frequency and sexual quality is a marker for that, a measure for that. Generally speaking, if it's a sexless marriage, or a low sex, low libido marriage, the quality of that marriage is down, and it correlates directly with the divorce rates, which women at 75%, are the ones who are filing those, right? So women seem to be the reason, at least from their desire perspective, whether they can blame the guy or blame themselves, it doesn't really matter. But from their desire perspective, women seem to be the ones to lose the desire and to put up barriers to sexual frequency and quality. And then they are also the ones to file for the divorces. An interesting thing. All right. So this is going to save people's lives, saves people's marriages. As although we can say objectively, and women might not like it, but objectively, truly, it is their desire system, their system and the way that their desire works. That is the downfall of the sex in a relationship, generally speaking. Not to say that guys aren't responsible too. It takes two to make it work, but it's generally the girl. All right. That's an unpopular thing, but I don't care. That's also the truth. That being said, though, I'm going to break down why it is, and you'll see that it's not because women are terrible and like all this. It's not really a negative thing it's not negative or positive. It just is. And you'll see that it's not necessarily an intentional or divisive thing, although it can be at times. That's not what it is. So this isn't a slam on women for, not doing their sexual duty kind of a show. All right. We're going to talk about drives and emotions and neurochemical responses and hormones and why it all works like that. Now I want to break into, though, universal law of female selection. Look, female sexual selection. Hypergamy is a thing. Okay, it's a thing, and it's an important factor in relationships. It's not the only factor, though. I think too much weight gets put on hypergamy sometimes, because it is important, but it's not the only thing. And for you guys who are actually watching and paying attention to my content, you guys are the smart people. Most people on the internet are not smart people. They need platitudes and binary thinking. So they sit there they have to, have one thing or, it's this or that, right? It's A or B. They can't think past two options. They can't think in terms of sexual desire in relationships being a system of several variables that fits together. They can't think like that because more than 1 to 2 variables and their brain stops working. And then they pretend to be smart by puking up platitudes on the internet. And because of course the content that I'm driving to you guys for free is on the internet, you tend to see that being puked out, right? But the smart people generally, there's a lot of smart people not making any comments at all. I mean, some smart people do make comments, especially in my comment section is actually a fun read if my comment section has a lot of good comments. But I'm also a small channel, right? You start getting into bigger channels, people get stupider and stupider. And so then, you got guys out there, hypergamy this, hypergamy that, like it's the only thing. And then of course the people that slam against it or attack it are attacking a straw man. They're attacking a definition of hypergamy or an understanding of hypergamy from a perspective not of any sort of like research or what smart people are saying. It's from a perspective of what dumb people are saying on the internet, right? Like, so like understanding of hypergamy, let's say from like a Rollo Tomasi perspective, and he's written stuff in his books about that, is not as binary and dumb, okay, as like guy on the internet trying to talk about it, or some of the other content creators that are soundbiting it for larger audiences. I mean, someone like, for example, like we'll say Fresh and Fit or whatever, right? They're smart in how they run their podcast because they're running it for, hundreds of thousands of people. And most of those people are either not smart, okay, and can't understand these concepts, or they're just new to the concepts. So they soundbite them, for they have ways of soundbiting it so it's more digestible to a larger audience, which takes talent and is a smart thing to do. That's why, besides girls on the show and things they do to market, probably that actually gets them more reach. But the people that listen actually like, let's say, their content, it's not that they're bad, they have bad content, except for, but the problem is, like, okay, somebody might, they might say something that is a soundbite or a very generalized, statement to make a point. And then, the audience doesn't understand that there's nuances to that point, right? And so they take it as a platitude, they take it as a scientific law or truth, when it's really just a statement to illustrate a point, and I won't go down the rabbit hole there, but the point is, like, a lot of you guys, your understanding of how women sexually select is pretty well skewed to platitudes and binary statements. You actually don't understand. You think you understand how women work, you actually don't. And so I hope to help you with that a little bit. All right. Hypergamy is not the only driver. It's just happens to be a very important one. There's other drivers in place when women are selecting for mates, or when women have desire or attraction for sex or desire for their partners. I'm going to present to you something a little different. I've talked about it before. We can call this the universal law of female sexual selection. This is, if you need let's say, a guiding principle, this is a better guiding principle than some of the other things out there, including hypergamy. And I say that just because, women have sex with guys all the time who are not their hypergamous best for different reasons, right? And so then it makes people think, well, hypergamy then isn't true or real. Well, no, it's true, and it's true in a sense that it's a driver. It's a thing that drives their sexual decisions, but it's not the only thing that drives sexual decisions. And we look at what David Buss's work on why women have sex, and you have hundreds of different reasons why women have sex. Hypergamy, or it's the best, mostest high value man I can find, that's only one of a few hundred other reasons women have sex. When we look at that, it tells us, okay, it doesn't mean that hypergamy is not true. It just means that hypergamy is a driver amongst other motivational factors, right? Other things that would motivate them to have sex. So this is more of a universal law if you need one. And it kind of is somewhat derived from Briffault's law. So Briffault's law states the female, not the male, determines all the conditions of the animal family. Where the female can derive no benefit from association with the male, no such association takes place. So in other words, the females tend to be the sexual selectors because they have the eggs, they have the babies, right? So they're the ones who are going to try to control and decide who they're sexually selecting, and they're driven that way because they're the ones who have to protect their womb, so to speak, and this is where hypergamy fits in, have sex when they're ovulating and getting pregnant with, the best option for a pregnancy, both, genetically and also opportunistically, with who they could keep around to be able to take care of, that baby or that offspring, right? And so at the end of so what they're looking at, though, is they're the ones who determine the conditions, because there's the selectors, tend to be the selectors, all right? And if the female can't derive a benefit from having association with the male, then she will not associate with him. There's no reason for her to associate with that male unless there's benefits for her doing so. And so it seems it's really not that profound of a statement. It kind of makes sense. Why would she have males around if there's no perceived benefit? Even if the guy seems like a loser that she's taking care of, well, there's some psychological benefits she's getting from taking care of that loser, right? So there's benefit when we look at it at sex and sexual selection like this, in terms of benefits and risks, rewards, and consequences, that really can open your eyes into understanding how women sexually select, right? And so my version of not Brafalt's law, but my way of sort of illustrating it, which may change over time as I get better with how I want to word it. But, a woman's decision to have sex is a pragmatic risk reward equation. When the reward or advantages of sex are perceived as higher than the risk or consequences, she will mate. When the risk or consequences are perceived as greater than the reward or advantages, willing sex, right, will not occur. All right. So get it off the screen. I'll look at stuff for a minute. So yeah. So that is your guiding principle. If it benefits her, you have to understand it's all perceptions. So in the moment, if she perceives advantages or benefits, which could include sexual gratification, which could include, feeling good sexually, having orgasms, that could be part of the benefits. Okay. So this is not a transactional versus desire conversation. All right. Women, when they're when they're sexually selecting and their desire, it's all emotion based. They don't have checklists like you guys think they do, where it's like, oh, this is the alpha fox guy, this is the beta pays guy. I'm gonna have sex with them due to all of these good reasons to have sex with them. That's not how it works. I swear, I think some of you guys literally think that's how they think. They don't. No woman thinks like that. All right. They just feel like they want to have sex and they feel sexually open, or they don't feel like it. That's how it works. But what plays the role of whether or not they're going to feel like it and that switch is going to flip on for them, or whether that switch is going to stay off for them, which one that happens to be, there's going to be a bunch of factors playing a role. And what it adds up to is, if she perceives not having as high of a benefit and not having as high of a reward for the sex versus the risk or consequences of the sex, then what ends up happening is she has less sex, or she doesn't want to have sex. Okay. We'll get into how this fits in with marriage and stuff like that, and how it fits in with hypergamy, or where hypergamy fits in. All right. I'm going to go now check your guys' chats here. Hi. Yeah, hit the like button. That helps me. Like buttons are good. What else do we have here? Algo Boost. Thanks, Ghost Cat. Yeah, holidays have been good. I'm still getting over illness. Yeah, I actually feel pretty good. This ear is still like plugged up. I had some weird ear infection. Craziness, dude. So anyway, hopefully I can get like full on back into like workout programs and all kinds of stuff I want to do. It's just been a little rough the last few weeks, but also good. My just been hanging around with the girl and staying inside. Nothing wrong with that. And doing some work for, my clients, doing some work for presentations. Got a presentation tonight for, Masculine Empowerment Network guys, so that's going to be fun. Really killer presentation for those guys. My work makes me happy. So I'm just doing a lot of research on that stuff. Yeah, dude, like, it's not just, you have 30-year-old virgins who are not voluntarily virgins. Okay. Well, a lot of those guys have so many hangups around sex it's spurging out, right? They're spurg type stuff. They're thinking like a spurg, and that's why they're hindering themselves. They got, a lot of ways of ego protecting. Guys ego protect a lot, Now, if you're a 30-year-old virgin or whatever, you should probably be working with me for a year, because there's some inner game stuff and some stuff we can undo. Understand when I say there's some people that are just stupid and they can't be helped, right? I hate to say it like that, but it's true. They won't want to help themselves. They can't be helped. They're just going to be dumb, and there's nothing else you can do, right? Those are people that, you'll see them All right. But there's a lot of people who can, and the stupidity that we have, I can tell you, when I say stupid, a lot of people get angry or upset when I call my audience, some members, not everybody, but some members of my audience stupid. But listen, you got to understand, shaming obviously works, okay, as a motivation. I've been stupid very many times in my life. All right. When I say you're stupid, it's not a statement about your IQ necessarily. There's people with low IQ who do smart things, and there's people with high IQ who do stupid things. I certainly was one of the people who did stupid things, um, in various different times of my life when I didn't understand certain things about women. All right. And even when I got really good at picking up on women and getting laid and all that stuff, I ended up doing stupid things in my relationships. So we do stupid things when we're unaware, and when our ego steps in to either protect ourselves or to try to give us like that false confidence, then we're real stupid, because we could have all of the skills, talents, and abilities and intelligence in the world to do better decisions, do the right thing, but we won't do the right thing because our egos are in the way. We're incompetent, and we don't realize we're incompetent, right? And that's a lot of guys who come to this stuff. It's like a lot of guys some people come to content on the internet to get help from relationships and with women from an understanding that they don't know, right? And they need to learn and get better, which is good. That's actually the way I approach it. Even though I coach other people, I always approach a topic as like, all right, I might not know what I think I know here. So I'm going to have an open mind. Could be things that are missing. That's how I know so much stuff. It's not ego protecting is what makes me highly knowledgeable here, because I'm open to learning always, right? Anyways, you just have to have that mindset. But back to the presentation, because I'm getting off track, aren't I? Okay, so yeah, that's how women sexually select. All right, it's perceived benefits versus perceived risk reward, and it's not a logical thing. Now, this is something I'll go over tonight with my masculine empowerment guys over at John MLD's group, and I'll also be going over it in my year-long coaching program, guys. Links in the descriptions for all of that. Actually, I'll take a quick pause here and say I will too go over the stuff in detail, in better detail, in my email list at various different times. I'm building that up, and we might do something with that, like get into doing a monthly Zoom call or something like that for the guys on my list. So if you want to be invited to like a monthly Zoom call or doing some different things with me more off YouTube, right? Where we can address and identify problems for you. It won't be as in-depth as the guys in my personal coaching programs, but obviously not especially if it's free or very low cost. But if you want that opportunity, make sure you're on the free email list. It doesn't cost anything. I don't spam. I mean, yeah, sure, I'll occasionally advertise things that I'm doing or my programs, but it's always usually embedded in really good content and stuff that is not just content, right? It's stuff that's actionable, stuff that'll help you, stuff that'll increase your awareness and understanding, both in mindset too, not just women, okay, or sex and pickup or relationships, but also in your overall mindset and ability to achieve goals in life and what you want. So a lot of success stuff, a lot of accountability stuff, all good shit. And it's not like grifted, right? I mean, it's all things that will help. But anyways, there's advertising break. Let's go back to the so women are making these choices based on risk reward. If you can think like that, if you understand that and understand it, it's not a logical decision, it's emotional. So when they feel the benefits, right, then they'll go with the decision for sex. When they feel the risk and feel the potential consequences, if they're not feeling and in present what's not present in their mind, their reticular activating system doesn't have a presence of mind of how great the sex is going to be or how much fun they're having and all that. And the reticular activating system is presence of mind of, my friends are going to think I'm a slut, or well, I was just talking to this other guy and now I'm talking to this guy. If I sleep with him, I'll feel like an idiot, or maybe he won't want to be in a relationship with me, or if I do this too quickly, or when things flip into risk and consequence, right? Then and benefits and advantages to the sex are reduced in her mind, but not just her mind, but her emotional experience. Well, she's not having sex now. Okay, she's choosing not to. And in relationships and marriages, and I'll get into this, but stress as well as a need for power causes this flip into having more of an awareness of risk and consequence, and losing some of the consequences are losing benefits, losing power in a relationship, because that's their paradigm, how they look at sex. So now they start controlling the amount of sex they're having. And they don't do it because they really want to have sex, but they're going to try to control themselves. That's not how it works. It's that if you could think of their, you know, desire to have sex and that internal horny feeling as a switch, the switch literally turns off. All right. And so that's what happens in the long-term relationship marriage, unless you do some things different. All right. But if you can understand, even from a pickup perspective, like a girl you've just met, you know, her friends are kind of like, one of her friends is talking to a guy, might even go home with that guy. The other friends are like doing their thing. She's had a couple drinks, but she's not too drunk, you know, so she's loose. And then she's kind of isolated with you somewhere. And she's, you know, there's like, you guys are in that close space, having really flirtatious conversations. Also, her hormones are up because maybe she's ovulating. So she's, you know, having high sexual hormones there and all that. And she's in a space with you, more of an isolated space. She's got short-term thinking now, okay? And she's not perceiving risk or consequence of maybe going off and having sex with you as being as high, you know? So like, you know, she's in this space with you, and you know, she's able to have the desire and all the feelings, partly too because she doesn't necessarily know you, and maybe, you know, she doesn't want a relationship with you, right? Maybe that's what it is. And so the consequences of losing relationship potential, or being shamed by her friends, or feeling like a slut, or, you know, possible danger, which you're not giving off any danger signals or vibes and all that. And so like all those consequences or potential risk for sex are down in her experience. And then, you know, those potential rewards are being built and more intense. And then next thing you know, she's sending a text to her friend. Hey, I'm just gonna have this guy drive me home. I'll text you guys tomorrow. Her girlfriends are like, ooh, whatever, like go get some girl, right? So the girls are supporting it, right? And then she ends up sleeping with this dude, right? She ends up sleeping with a guy. Well, that's a consequence reward equation. That's one way of looking at it, right? Whereas, let's say same scenario, but then, you know, one of her friends is, you know, too drunk and potentially like a danger to herself and might not get home okay, and like all this stuff. And then this girl who's isolated with you and is having a good time, she's like the only person, you know, that she perceives. She's the only person that can help her friend out. She doesn't want to look like a bitch. She doesn't want to look like somebody who abandons her friend. She doesn't want a safety issue for a friend. Like all the consequences now and risks of going off of this with you to go sleep with you are now, you know, the risks and consequences of that to her friend and to her own reputation and some different things. They start to weigh more heavily. You know, maybe she makes out with you real quick, but then she's like, okay, I got to go deal with my friend. Right. And then she goes off with her friend. So that she makes a different decision. And we can break down scenarios into marriages, into relationships, into one night stands, into, you know, I've been dating a girl for 3 or 4 dates here and we haven't slept together. What does that mean? We can break it all down to risk and reward. If you can put, you know, in one column, how you perceive what's a bunch of perceived risks for her for sleeping with you. And some of those risks are completely in her mind. They're totally psychological, mental paradigms, you know, but what are the risks here, you know, that she's perceiving with having some sex, right? Because sex is fun, sex is good most of the time, right? It should be anyway. I know for a lot of women it isn't, which means that because their partners are not that good at it, or because they're not in tune with their bodies, which means the reward is reduced now, right? Not as much reward for sex if it's not as great, not good for the girl. But at any rate, if you put down in one column what are a bunch of risks, and another column what are her perceived rewards, it'll make more sense to you why she's doing what she's doing. And then that'll allow you to sort of, we'll say, game, okay, through this, right? To lead her to having ultimately what would be good for both of you if she's in it with you and attracted to you, which is having good sexual relationship, having good sexual experiences. You can lead it there when you can understand this risk reward paradigm. All right. And this is a nice way of looking at it, because a lot of you guys do struggle socially, and some of you guys do struggle with, anyone who struggles with that binary thinking, this is as binary as it gets. And it does work as a strategy, as a technique anyway, or a model for helping to understand it. All right. So now let's look at how women perceive sex in general, though. All right. Women use sex as power. Ever since they're young, maybe, ever since they start to become, we'll say, transitioning from being a child to being a teenager, young, we'll say very, very, very young adult, not really still a kid in my opinion, but, starts to go through some changes to where she starts to become more of a sexual being. We'll say she's starting the process of becoming a sexual being, becoming a woman, right? Puberty, all that shit. Little boys, and hopefully that's all it is, but we know, unfortunately, grown people too, unfortunately, you got to protect your daughters, guys, see her as a sex object, right? Women are seen as sex objects early on and first, okay? So that's how they, perceive themselves, but that's also how, everyone perceives them, including their girlfriends, including their social circles. It's not just dirty men doing it, right? It's also women, okay? It's everybody sees a woman as a sexual being, oftentimes before they see her as anything else, okay? It's not a statement, a social, a social justice statement to say that, or anything like, we need to stop this, it's like, it just is, okay? I'm not here to say it's right or wrong, okay? It just is what it is, and you're not going to stop anytime soon. I mean, for the individual woman, if she wants to be seen as more than that, then she needs to do more and be more, right? I mean, these women who claim to be traditional conservative married Christians who are showing their bodies all over the internet, but they're baking cookies, right? That bullshit. That's clearly to collect simps and to simp hunt. I don't care. Show your shit, show your boobs, show your hot outfit, baking cookies, but you're simp collecting on the internet, you're attention collecting, and it's not about, traditional, if you want, which is fine, but if you don't want to be seen as the hot, sexy person on the internet baking cookies, if you want to be seen as a serious, commentator on Christian and traditional values in marriage, for, let's say, then you need to present yourself as a serious traditional commentator, right? At least most of the time. You're not going to be seen as that. When someone sees a picture of, somebody baking cookies with her tits out, they're going to see her as a pair of tits baking cookies, all right? If she's not doing that and making smart commentary and presenting herself that way, well, maybe people will see you different. So the answer for women, if you don't want to be seen as sex object, is just to be different, all right? It's not that hard. You have to do it, though. Nobody's going to do it for you. But that being said, though, that's how they learn. They learn this when they're younger. And so what that means is, as sexual objects, they learn that sex is a form of power for them. In fact, sex is one of the most, their sexuality in general, being sexy and sex is the most amount of power that they tend to have, right, in the world. Unless they are, a Pulitzer Prize winner, you know what I mean? Which is not a high percentage of people. That one of the biggest sources of power she has is her sexuality. And so she learns, and remember, think of the pragmatic nature of how women operate and how their desire operates. She learns that sex is a tool for power, as well as something that feels good for her, as well as something that, whatever, all of the things that sex means to her. Sex is also a tool to have power over herself, over her relationship, social power, power of others. This is why, from like a feminist perspective, it's exploring your sexuality, meaning sleeping with a bunch of dudes, and and not having any consequences, which we know there are consequences, but that whole idea comes from the idea, is that sex makes you powerful. You know what I mean? And it does. Sex is a form of power for women. And it can be a form of power for men too, but those men have to be attractive and know how to do it and use it, right? But for women, it's an automatic form of power. And the younger I say younger as adults, meaning, we'll start the cutoff at 21 because that's where I cut it off for myself. But, 21, 22, 23, 24, she's going to have more power with her sexuality and in general than she will, let's say, at 40. All right. But that doesn't mean a 40-year-old woman doesn't have sexual power. She can have a lot of sexual power. Right. And so women just learn this as a paradigm. And so what happens is now they bring this paradigm of sex gives me power. And here's the important thing. Sex not only gives them power, but sex is something that they give or take away as a form of power. If they give sex, even though they enjoy it, what is involved when a woman's giving sex to somebody? Even if she has a lot of orgasms and enjoys it, she's not banging. She's not the one doing the fucking. She is being fucked, okay? Generally speaking, by the guy. We'll talk heterosexual, right? And so, like, by being the fucky rather than the fucker, right? She feels like it's not necessarily true, but there's a mammalian brain reaction and a belief system based on, being sexualized since she was young, as all women are. It's a feeling or understanding that, okay, I'm giving up power by having sex, right? If I have sex with this person, to some degree, I'm giving up power. See, it's the anticipation and the kind of the withholding and of it's the guy pursuing her for her sex in the relationship that gives her the power. Once she gives the sex, she loses the power. Well, what about all these women giving one night stands and this and that and the other? Well, yeah, exactly. They're giving away the the milk before the cow. That's been, that little analogy. And it's true. They are losing power with that, which is silly and problematic, isn't it? For a lot of women to just, if they're giving themselves up to just any guy they feel like it. But see, there's a sense though that they're getting, first of all, remember, see, we get into complexities when we go past Brafalt's law and the universal law of sexual selection for women, right? And with power, we get into complexity. She can have power by giving it up to a bunch of guys too, because she gets social attention and more sexual attention that way. If she's in what you see oftentimes, women who do that are women who perceive themselves as less attractive. You know what I mean? So it's women who perceive themselves as not as attractive as, let's say, a 9 or a 10. Let's say she perceives herself as a 7. She'll give up sex more to compete with that 9 or 10. See, she's using sex for power. When she sleeps with a guy on the first date, if she does it just for herself and her own sexual gratification, this is why a lot of times she sexually gratifies herself with guys who are not relationship material, because she doesn't give up as much power, meaning less consequence, less risk, to a guy that she's never going to do a relationship with. This guy just got out of prison. Why? I'm not going to have a relationship with him. Now, unfortunately, though, there are complexities involved because we have emotions. We have neurochemical reactions, which we can call emotions. And so what happens is she sleeps with that guy who just got out of prison, who she's not going to have a relationship with. She can have all of the, she can just let herself go sexually because she doesn't perceive the risk or consequence, because she doesn't feel like she's going to lose power, because she's not going to marry this dude, or she's not going to have kids with this guy. What do you mean? Oh, but then she has great sexual experiences with the guy because she let herself go. And then what happens? Neurochemicals kick in, oxytocin kicks in. all that stuff happens, right? Like take him out of the picture, anything he's doing to help things along with his game. Like now she's falling for the guy, right? Like that's what ends up happening. And then you see, and that's how that one goes. So there's complexities here that happen. But if you understand that it's a cost benefit analysis, and if you understand that women perceive sex as power to them, then you will better understand the nuances of why an individual woman makes certain decisions she might make. All right. And notice it has, so far, I haven't mentioned high value man. That doesn't really play a role. It plays a role, but doesn't in this case, right? High value man has more to do with benefits and perceived benefits and perceived risks as well. So the interesting, someone said, I've heard it said a couple, like, well, I've heard some creators say that hypergamy is not real because women won't try to settle down necessarily with the most high value man. A lot of times they will settle down with the guy that, is more, they feel is more of a match when they could have gotten this other guy, right? So how does hypergamy work then if that's the case? Well, again, hypergamy is not the only drive. That's how that works. And the real drive is, benefits worth versus risk. She'll still have sex with a high value man if she perceives the benefits as astronomically high and the risks and consequences low. But what she would, if her perceived benefits though are, because she's, let's say 32 years old and she's more long-term relationship minded, her perceived benefits now are, well, wait a second, if I sleep with this higher value guy that I'm not likely or less likely going to get into a relationship with, and if I do get in a relationship with him, I will have less power in that relationship. He will have all the power, and that's scary to me. I see higher risk, higher consequence to going with a high value man, even if I get him in a relationship. If I sleep with him short term, I'll lose opportunity with the guy who's technically SMV less valuable. I'll lose that opportunity because this guy is going to be disgusted with me and probably not want to marry me. So that's lost there, right? And then if let's say I do have sex with him, we end up in a relationship, I won't have any power in that relationship whatsoever. So now she's sort of the bad boys or even high SMV guys. Maybe she was banging a high value man to get in his, classic car and to have vacation sex or get on a boat or something. When she was 23 years old, she's not doing that now at 31. Okay. She's going to reject this guy now. Right. Hypergamy plays a role. It's not the only role. You see what I'm saying? The benefits, perceived benefits and reward for, let's say, a more normal, stable guy at 31 is perceived higher than the consequence of going with that guy. So that's who she ends up going with. All right. That's why hypergamy is still there, still plays a role. She still gets aroused by the, guy that checks all the SMV blocks. The desire could be there, but she will shut the desire off because once the perceived risks are higher than the benefits, that switch comes off. Sex is power. She hooks up with, Bob the accountant or whoever. Although I got some alpha male ass accountants in my private group, so we're not talking about those guys. We'll say, I don't know, pick a less alpha guy, what job he might have. I say accountant. There's tons of alpha accountants out there, so I don't know. But anyways, she picks a nice guy to settle down with, and you know what? Her sexual feelings are high in the beginning. Why? I'll get into why that is too. She perceives him as high value, higher than her value. And she also knows that she has to get this guy. And, there's a lot of motivations to get him. And so sexually, she's turned on. She knows if she's not turned on sexually, she won't get all of the benefits that Bob has to offer. Right. And so she's turned on and, the benefits of having sex, which is getting the relationship, getting him, getting the marriage, getting a future, all the things, all the prizes, right, from the relationship are tied in with sex. So her desire will be higher because the perceived benefits are higher and he's perceived as less or lower risk than high SMV entrepreneur, six-pack abs guy, or whatever it is, right? So she goes to him, okay? And then they get in the relationship. She gets all the prizes, and she gets his attachment and his love, and what happens now? Less benefits, perceived benefits for the sex. Sex is a thing of power for her. Now there's a couple things that happen, but now there's less benefits, and then those consequences and risks of sex become more prevalent in her reticular activating system. If I'm giving up my power through sex 5 times a week to my husband, because that's her mental paradigm, then I'm losing power in the relationship. He'll take me for granted. There's a lot of things that could crop up there. And so the light switch comes off, because what made the switch go on was winning all the prizes for the relationship, you see. And once she got all the prizes, and those prizes are perceived as being independent of whether or not she has sex with them or not, because as guys just want to have a good sexual relationships. Guys don't have this cost benefit thing. And we know this. Why do we know this? Because guys just want to have sex, right? So guys will have sex with girls that are way more risk and way more cost than they should be, and they'll still have sex with them. Like, guys are not quite operating in the same way that girls are. All right. So anyway, and there's more to this, so we'll keep going. Hopefully it's making sense to you guys. I'm trying to deduce this down into models that are more sensible, that make more sense. All right. Taking complex topics and making them into sensible, digestible things. It's not an easy thing. So women use sex as power, cost benefit analysis. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the relationship, the switch is on. All right. Now, why is that switch on? Well, let's talk about that. And I just talked about that a lot, but let's talk about it some more. Oh, well, we'll jump into this slide. Sorry, I have a slideshow. I'm trying to follow the slideshow, not be all over the place. So once she doesn't need sex to get the rewards, what happens? The switch comes off. This is not just transactional, by the way, model. It's everything roped up into it. All right, and I'll get to that, what I mean. Sex becomes a contest for her of how much she can get for doing as little sexually as possible. I don't know if I worded that well, but sex is a thing that she uses for power. Okay, when the perceived benefits of having power with her sexuality is higher than the benefits of the act of sex and the enjoyment she'll get out of it, it ends up becoming a contest. How much can I get for doing as little as possible? She's not consciously aware that she's doing this. All right, let me jump in. Some women are very consciously aware they do this. Some women are shitty partners. They're crappy wives. They're crappy partners. And they're just assholes. That's just some women, just like some guys, right? Some people, let's make it gender neutral here, guys. Can't offend anybody. Some people are just assholes. I've had guys ask for advice. Usually they're not clients because they're not going to pay for the advice because they're too lazy and they're not that invested. They'll ask me though, and then they'll interrupt me in the middle of my fucking advice to tell me all of the bullshit that they think, which is wrong. They don't want any advice. They don't want it. They're just assholes. They're assholes to their wives. They're assholes to their partners. They don't want to change anything. They just want to get what they want without any work. And that's how people are, right? People are wired to try to get what they want with as little work as possible. So many dudes are like that. Some of you guys listening right now are fucking like that. Some of you guys listening to me, you're assholes, and you are assholes to your girls. You're assholes to your wives, and not in a good way, in a real pussy kind of way. Okay. And that's why she doesn't like you. And you're not even going to listen to, you're going to listen to me, but not listen to me. You're not going to do anything about it. That fits the profile of a percentage of you listening to me right now. All right. You got to fix that. We got to change that. I have a lot of former hey, I was kind of a jackass with the way I thought about this. People in my coaching groups, I have had my fair share of jackass moments. I am the last person to really judge anybody, okay? Because I've made tons of mistakes in my own life. But, you know, you improve from those mistakes, get better. That's the point, right? So there's no judgment, but some people, women, okay, assholes. Okay, so they're doing shit on purpose. They fucking know it and they don't care. They just want what they want and they're lazy and they don't care. So there's a lot of people like that. But there's not a lot of people who aren't assholes like that. Women who are not like that. Okay. There's a lot of women who have the best intentions, but their emotions and their neurochemical system is reacting a certain way. And their schemas, when I say a schema, which is their unconscious principles and ideas that they don't understand or realize are operating, you know, and the conscious mind isn't recognizing that these principles are operating. They have principles and ways of thinking about sex and sex and relationships that are fueling this action of shutting herself off sexually and only using sex to get as much as she can and to get as much benefit as possible from one crumb of sex, right? Like if she can go from once a week to once every other week and get away with it, she will. If she can go to once a month, she will. If she can get all the benefits from the guy she's with by and reducing the sex more and more, she will. And this has to do with assuming she's not just an asshole, right? Let's say she's not. She's having these feelings and these that are pushing her like that. It's an unconscious belief system she has. And then it's this paradigm that's showing up. And some of the stuff is rooted in hindbrain drives. We'll get to that. And hypergamy does play a role in this, by the way, a major one. So I'll get to that. All right. So that's what's happening. And so what's our role is to, as men, your role is to keep this switch on. As it, we'll say like this, it's actually up to her to have her switch on. That's important to recognize. As guys, we tend to remove agency from women without realizing we do it. You know, I don't mean to do that. It's up to her to keep the switch on. Okay. But it's up to us to create the conditions for that and to make it easy, to make it good for her to switch that on, switch this sexual switch on as often as possible. And it's not just, I'm using the word sex, but sex and intimacy rolled up into one thing because they're actually not separable. All right. That's another paradigm women have. They separate intimacy from sex. Well, snuggling and cuddling is not the same as penetration. So I have to make sure I get a certain amount of non-sexual snuggling, cuddling in order to offer the penetration. You see, it's like this. It's this constant for a lot of women. It's a constant because sex is power to them. It's a constant negotiation in their head, even when they desire the alpha male. Okay, it's transactional relationships will fail inevitably, but you know, transactional ones, it's a negotiation in her head. But even when she really desires the guy, though, she still has some of this negotiation going on a lot of times, unless her schema and paradigm can change. And that has to do with sex having power for her, right? I mean, if you had the thing, you know, if the thing you had, like, for example, if you're a powerful man with a ton of money, you got billions of dollars. You know what I noticed about guys who are like millionaires and billionaires, actual billionaires? You know what I've noticed? They're careful about where they spend their money. Sometimes they don't care, you know, like they're going to be like, yeah, we'll just spend it here. You know, they do that. They have those days, those moments, because it's, you know, the juice isn't worth the squeeze to care about it. Yeah, like whatever. Let's just go buy some of this. But for the most part, though, like if someone were to ask them to borrow money, can I borrow $100? The billionaire is going to be like, dude, I don't just loan money out. I don't know what the fuck you think I am. Like, you know what I mean? Most of them are not just going to hand you $100, even though they totally could. Wouldn't affect their pocketbook. Why is that? Because their money is a source of power for them. And they know if they devalue the power they have with the money that they've personally earned, then it'll lose its power. And it'll lose its power in their life. It'll lose its power in other people's lives. And that's how you end up with a lottery winner who's bankrupt in a few years, right? He doesn't recognize the power that money has for him. Usually a lottery winner is somebody who hasn't earned the money, so they don't recognize the power of it. And so they're very careful about spending it. They see, even though spending money, if I give somebody $1,000, right, that in theory could give me power over them in a positive way. But if I don't frame that properly, it won't, right? That person I just gave money to might take me for granted. They might even resent me for giving them money. You see what I mean? That happens a lot. So that's a good analogy for sex, right? For women, because sex doesn't have the power for you guys as it does for women. Now it can. For me, sex has power because I know how to use it. But for most people, it does not. Okay. Because they don't know how to use it. As a man, though, you have to learn how to use it. Women just sort of automatically have it. And so, just like you're not letting someone borrow $100, this is why she's not just blowing somebody in an alley necessarily, unless she's that person who doesn't recognize the power she has with her sexuality. You see what I mean? And so, anyway, down a rabbit hole, but your job is to turn this on and keep it on, right? Well, we'll say your job is to create the conditions where this either gets turned on or stays on, or she doesn't get what she wants. You know what I mean? That's the other part. She's got to be the one to do it, though. All right, let's look at how hypergamy fits in. We're already at an hour-ish, almost an hour, so I'm going to try to speed this up. Okay. So here's how she sees you in the beginning, or she wouldn't be attracted to you. And so there is a level of seeing your mate value as higher than hers. So a lot of women don't like this. The women that don't like this are coming. I'll show you why in the next slide they don't like this. But without the commitment in play, you guys just start dating. I like this guy here. And this hot girl looking at this guy. Ooh, high value. It is subjective, though, too. Understand, man. This is not the most attractive, guy with his shirt off here. But I've seen this. You've seen it. You've seen the hot girl with this guy. And you just assume he's got money, and that's why. Well, maybe that he does. Maybe it's more than that. A lot of times it's more than that. Okay, so that's your jealous, ego-protecting brain trying to rationalize why the pretty girl gets the less attractive guy or the older guy. I got so many guys mad at me because my girl is attractive and I'm older. So mad. But the thing is, that's a rinse and repeat situation. I can, if I was, that's how my dating life goes. I just happen to be in a good relationship, but that's how my dating life goes, right? There's something I'm doing. All right. And anyways, when you do the right things is the point. Your mate value is perceived as high. In the beginning, without the commitment, she perceives you as high in mate value. This means that a couple things. Now, when I say, we say better, okay, she perceives you as better than she is. Not in everything, obviously. If she's a girl who, rides skateboards or is a really good cook or something, or she likes to ski and you've never been skiing before, okay, she's not going to see you as a better skier than her because, or if she gets on the slopes with you, she's not going to lose attraction for you because you suck at skiing and she's really good at it. That's not how it goes. Okay. It's not how hypergamy works. It's mate value. It's your overall. Now, if you're on the ski slopes having fits and mental breakdowns because you're not as good at skiing, or getting butt hurt or getting pissed off, getting competitive with your girl for no reason. These are things that guys do that makes them less attractive, right? But if you're just have a good sense of humor and a good mindset and you're just trying to learn how to ski in the bunny hill and she's running circles around you and you're saying, good job, babe. You know what I mean? You're still seen as high mate value. All right. So she perceives you as high mate value in the beginning, and your job is just to maintain this throughout the course of a relationship. But, I'll show you why that it becomes difficult once the commitment is realized. So we're saying no commitment, easy exit at this point. What that means is she has to get you. She has to get something. Now, when she has to get something, what kicks in? Dopamine kicks in and testosterone kicks in. Okay, what are precursors to sexual desire and being more sexually forward and wanting more sex? Dopamine and testosterone. So, women have lower levels of testosterone as it is. Compared to a guy, it's much lower. Guys with normal testosterone levels are much higher than a woman's. This is why they're part of the reason why they want sex all the time. Women generally don't have an understanding for how often guys want sex, how much guys want sex, and how much of a part of it is for what they think about, because they don't have the testosterone levels. All right. But having such, and we know this too, because women who've, like in bodybuilding, who've taken testosterone to try to boost themselves, all of a sudden their sex drive goes through the roof and they're thinking about, and they're like, holy shit, is this what guys are like? This is terrible. Like, I can't stop, like I can't stop wanting this. Like, this is actually disruptive to my life. Yeah. Welcome to being a guy. Women really don't have an understanding. They're very solipsistic, right? They don't have that understanding of what guys are dealing with high testosterone. And so when she's trying to get this guy, though, it kicks in. The lower testosterone level kicks in a bit higher because she's trying to get something. The act of it pursuing, getting is dopaminergic and also kicks your testosterone in it. And dopamine and kicking in the testosterone is what makes somebody horny and want to have sex. All right. That's part of the equation anyway, to make somebody want sex. So in the beginning, she's trying, it's not this narcissistic divisive thing women are doing. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. It's that she is trying to get something. Right. And so there's this excitement of and this uncertainty of not having a guy in a relationship and going for it. And then in the beginning of a relationship, even in the beginning of a commitment, she's 1 month, 2 months in. Why is it the honeymoon phase? What's the honeymoon phase? Because everything's new and she doesn't know what the outcomes are going to be, right? So she has to be her best self. She's motivated. The dopamine kicked in. She's motivated to be her best self every week. She's motivated to be her best, because she knows it's a new relationship. Like, whether she consciously recognizes it or it's unconscious, she knows she doesn't fully have the security in this relationship yet. And she has to get that. There's an element of having to go do something to make that happen, whether it's just put on makeup that day or look hot or go to the gym or, give them a blowjob or, be pleasant, right? When she's not feeling like she wants to be pleasant, there's more motivation in the beginning because she wants to get this thing, this commitment, right? That more motivation kicks dopamine in. That dopamine and the process of getting something kicks in testosterone. Dopamine, testosterone means more sex. Okay. So it's a neurochemical equation, something that they can sort of control, but sort of not to, right? There's two elements. There's the element of flipping a switch on and off for them, but they don't necessarily know that. You know what I mean? Like, I can't have in a consult a couple who's in their first 3 years of marriages, sex gone down to once a month. And I tell the girl, you just need to flip your switch on and be horny. She'll look at me like I'm crazy. Okay. Because a lot of this stuff is neurochemically driven and hormonally driven. All right. Now that doesn't mean, she needs to go get her hormones checked. Maybe she's, even though sex dried up and she's 33 years old, maybe she's going through menopause, or maybe it's birth control. Birth control, by the way, does affect hormones. So does menopause, but obviously in the 33-year-old woman, that's not what's going on here. So it's like, she probably just has normal levels of testosterone, normal levels of dopamine for a woman, but no motivation once she wins the commitment to kick those in. So those aren't kicking high when she's with the guy she's, supposedly in love with. And so now the sex drive isn't high either. You see what I'm saying? We understand how the brain works and how all this stuff goes. It's a logic problem. I don't have to, some of you guys are like, let's say that study, because as if you know how to read studies. Half the guys who ask that question don't even know how to look at a fucking study anyway. But Studies are important, but it's, there is something called logic and reasoning, right? A can conclude B, A plus B equals C, whatever, right? There's logical fallacies, there's logical reasoning. And when you have data and understanding about stuff, you can use a logical reasoning in order to come up with these conclusions. And that's what this is. Okay. So yeah, it makes sense. Like in a way, hormonally and from a neurochemical perspective, sex drive coming down for both, actually, the man and the woman. Actually, it's both a little bit. The problem is with the guy, it's like it comes down a little bit, you know, and then for the girl, it's like plummets to the fucking floor, right? So and that's the problem. They're not usually not even. And most unhappy couples do not have an even, we'll say, drive towards sex. And unfortunately, she's the one who's driving the sex, right? And that's the frame in the beginning. That's a bad framework, by the way, and something that you should set up differently right from the get-go. That's something I teach guys, right? And that won't be the scope of this video today because this is already too long. But get on the email list though, because I can tell you more about that. Ask questions, all right, if you're curious. But at any rate, you know what I mean? You want to set up the paradigm differently, the frame differently in the beginning. I am going to give you guys some actionable stuff. But you know, that's yeah, this is just without your frame changing things, without her mental paradigms being willing and able to change. This is what happens in the beginning. High sex because she doesn't have all of the awards and prizes yet. So she's trying to get those things. She's being on her best behavior. And it's not like she's negotiating with sex, although that does happen a lot in these transactional relationships, even in the ones where she's got high desire. And by the way, a lot of times those things do blend together. It's not like the girl who's mostly transactional for this guy or whatever in this picture. It's not like she's never had sexual desire. It's not really quite how it works. Okay. They blend together into a cost benefit equation. All right. Going back to that point. So she's going for this dude. Dopamine and testosterone's kicked in because she's motivated to get the things that motivation, and associating that motivation with him, with that neurochemical and hormonal boost, is what makes the sex drive go higher for her and the desire higher. Now back to let me go back to how do I go to my previous slide? I'm gonna end up fucking this. I'm gonna screwing this up. Oh, I screwed. Okay. All right. So back to this. Anyway, so this is, by the way, is hypergamy, right? Hypergamy is playing a role here because she does have to see this guy at least as higher mate value. In other words, like if she has kids with this guy, that kid is going to be of higher, more survivability than if she had kids with a guy of lower mate value. You know what I'm saying? And so she does have to see part of the equation is the benefits. Part of the benefits, if she truly desires him sexually, it's that she sees him as a boost, boosting up her, genetic potential for babies, other than, let's say, another guy or that she could go for, right? So hypergamy is playing a role here for sure. It's just not the only role, but it's vitally and critically important. She's not, in this case, I put this weird, skinny bald guy here, but maybe the skinny bald guy has impeccable game, high SMV and all this stuff in other ways. And he's not obese, quite honestly. And so maybe he knows how to fucking handle this girl if these were a real couple, so we never know what it is. But she does in this stage in the beginning, she has just perceive him as higher mate value. Now, here's what happens though during the full commitment. And this is where hypergamy is an important part of the equation. All right. So you give her the commitment. All right. This is what ends up happening. Whether you say it or you don't say it and just show it with your actions. You give the commitment to her because you also want some level of commitment in the relationship that's good for you. What you've done is you've boosted her perception of her own value up to being commensurate with your value. When you give away that commitment, you boost her to your value. Sometimes you'll boost her past your value. Okay. That's actually usually the next step. But at least in the beginning, you're boosting her to right about close to your value. Understand, okay, you could be a billionaire philanthropist with all of the boxes checked, impeccable game, impeccable everything. And you go with a really cute, you know, average girl in a small town or something, right? Clearly, we look at it, and she ends up going for you despite the perceived risks. Okay, that can happen. The perceived rewards are higher, so she goes with you. And let's say you end up like marrying her or moving her in with you and dedicating yourself to a relationship with her. What you just done is you said to her monkey brain, your monkey brain said to her monkey brain, okay, having two monkey brain conversations, said, you know what? I'm picking you because you are as valuable or at least more valuable than all the other women out there. I perceive you as more valuable than the other women out there, at least to me. So I'm going to be in a commitment with you. When you make that statement through your actions, right, which is ultimately what she wants. She wants to beat out all of the other girls. When she gets to beat out all the other girls, well, to you, her mate value is the highest out of all the other girls, which means you've dragged her at least up to close to your level, if not equal or above you. Women want the guy that they commit to and trust to see her as the best. Remember, women are solipsistic. They look at things through a hypergamous lens. You do not as a man. However, they think you do. So when you pick her and bring her in as a commitment, right, she wants to know and believe and feel that you think she is the best that you could do, in the same way that she would pick a guy that she's not settling with, right? The guy that she would want to pick is the best she can do. She wants to know that she's the best you can do, which means she beats out all the other girls. That's cuck psychology, right? Just like if she sees you as the best that she can do, you've beat out all the other guys, you've effectively cucked everybody else. She wants to know from the female side, she's cucked all the other girls, right? That's what she wants. Now, this is why women get really frustrated or upset because of the vernacular that got pushed out when guys are like, a woman's not equal to a man. Okay, that statement would piss off, that makes angry everybody as a female. Okay, even if they're not feminist, because they want to be perceived as an equal. They want to know that you perceive her at least as close enough to equal. That you, unless a girl has like a traditional conservative background and consuming I don't know, red pill content or something, and sort of she's changing her brain and how things work and changing her mind or whatever. Most girls, without having any conscious awareness of any of these arguments, they want you to think they don't want you to act like, we'll put it like this, you don't have to say she's my equal. They don't want you to act like she's below you. You know what I mean? That's not going to turn her on. That's not going to make her happy. That won't give her a sense of safety or security enough to even want to be with you necessarily in a full-on relationship commitment. You know what I mean? She may still be attracted to you, and that's another conversation. But it's these, and this is why collectively they want to be seen as, wait a second, no, we're 50-50. Because they want to know you've just boosted them, that you perceive her this way. Whether she actually is or not, right? Whether she perceives herself that way or not, she wants to know that you perceive her that way. But remember, you have the frame. So when you give her that commitment and give her all the prizes, and by the way, this is not an implication that in order to change this dynamic, you don't give her prizes or commitment. That would be that's one way, but that way usually doesn't go too well. That usually fails also. Okay. That's not going to be the conclusion here if you're already thinking that. But at any rate, you are raising her mate value. Okay. Just by offering a commitment, you raise her mate value to close to yours, almost equal. All right. So she just went from being down here, right, being lower and trying to earn this commitment. Well, now you just reached out with your hand, picked her up and said, you're my girl. Well, she feels great about that at first. And then what happens is the dopamine, right, of trying to get the things, she's already got the things. All right. So the dopamine to want to get the things isn't kicked in, which means there's not those precursors aren't there to kick in a little bit higher testosterone for her, which is already low testosterone. So now her desire for sex goes down. Not as much in the chemical system for her to desire sex. And then on top of that, the mental paradigm of using sex as power. Here's another thing. Once you bring her to this level, okay, she already perceived you as higher, and then she's going to use her womanly ways to get you to commit to her. All right. Remember, they're the stars of their own show. You know what I mean? And in this sitcom, in this rom-com, she used her womanly wiles to get the high value man, right? Whatever. And once not recognizing that, just once you chemically bond with a girl, you're just going, it doesn't matter. You don't think in terms of her value. You just bring her up because that's who you are as a guy. That's how we function as guys. We don't think like this. She does. And when you say they think like this and guys don't think like this, they get mad because they don't like the fact that they think like this and they want to believe you do it too. And everybody's got to be equal, but people, we're not equal. All right. In any sense of the word, nobody's really equal. Just people have different attributes that are better than other attributes, whatever. Anyway, so you bring her this level right now. Here's the thing, just yesterday or 2 months ago or whatever, she perceived herself, as you as the higher level, and she's still trying to earn the commitment. And then, you get on the knee and you say, let's do this, or whatever I fucking say, and now you're going to be together, and then some time passes, whatever. You've brought her up to this level. What happens is she has a sense of insecurity in herself because she was down here. And what changed? The only thing that changed was your perception. You reached out your hand and pulled her up after a period of time. That's what happened. You said, you know what? I like having sex with you enough. I like, hanging out with you enough. Come on, be with me. That's all you did. To her, though, that's like a massive gesture of eliminating competition and going with her. So what happens now, right? Her mate value, so deep down inside, unconsciously, she questions her own value and why you have her up here at first. So that's when the insecurity kicks in, gentlemen and ladies, the 2 women or 3 that might listen to this show. That's when the insecurity kicks in. That's when the low self-esteem is perceived now. Not during the beginning phases, of course, of the commitment when the excitement's there, but once that excitement starts to wear off, should I really be here? And with that comes a deep-seated fear of losing the relationship, and she projects all those insecurities on the guy, right? Because men are shit and cheat. She's gonna cheat on me if I don't, do A, B, and C to keep him under control. If he gets a little bit too high self-esteem about himself, you know what? I'm going to take him down a notch. I'm going to say this or that to make him feel. I don't want him to get a big head. I've had girls say that all the time after bomb sexual experiences. Well, I don't want it to go to your head, but that was the best sex I ever had. Really? You don't want it to go to my head? Somehow giving me the highest of compliments is going to do what, right? Make her lose power, right? The reason why she has to have this power is because she doesn't feel good about herself and she doesn't feel strong because you've had to lift her up to say you're in a commitment. So really, she kind of believes she's about down here somewhere, and then you've lifted her up here. And so in order to keep it together, she's got to do what she knows how to do to maintain power and control in the relationship. And the risks of losing power now and having you see her as lower value become higher than the reward of sex. So now we got that playing a role. So we have neurochemically, she's not executing that dopamine and that testosterone to get anything anymore. So we don't have the right chemical and hormonal concoction for higher sex drive. And then add to it, if she happens to be any level of they all have insecurities, by the way, every single one of them. It's just how much and how heavy it is. She feels the need to boost her. She's got to boost herself up. She doesn't like it. She is not even going to have you do it. You already lifted her up with a commitment. So now she has to continually boost herself up to stay there. And a lot of times what they do is they execute power in the relationship. Now, in this society as well, there's a distrust for men, but that distrust, women haven't trusted men for all of history, right? So this is not like a new thing, but not trusting men, that plays a role. The more she doesn't trust men in general, the less she'll trust the guy she's with, the more power she's going to try to execute in the relationship. And part of executing that power is withholding the sex, and she even starts to associate her low self-esteem as a product of her guy, because he lifted her up and said, okay, now be this woman that can be my companion. And so she's is like, well, wait a second, I'm good for I'm I'm not going to change. You need to love me for who I am, whatever. You hear shit like that. What is she really saying? It's like, I don't need to change or take any accountability for anything. It's how dare you say I need, how dare you say I need to better myself every day? Like you have to, as a man, right? Like, how dare you do that? Like all that stuff is outrage because she doesn't feel as good about herself and strong about herself. And this is a her thing, not even a you thing. You're not doing anything wrong or different necessarily. Sometimes guys are, sometimes aren't. Not the point though. And so that thing is, it plays this role in, and she has this resentment now from her guy. Plus the less sex means less neurochemical oxytocin connection. So you have a whole bunch of things going on. Remember, this is complex and stupid people can't follow. So hopefully you're smart and you can follow. Not the oxytocin isn't there as much because there's less sex. There's less things to stimulate that. So she doesn't have the emotions of attachment and bonding as high once this sex goes down. She sees herself as like, maybe I'm not as confident in myself. I don't know. Like the self-esteem, the insecurities kick in, and she takes out some of those bad feelings on her man, her partner, because ultimately what it is she doesn't trust men. She doesn't trust her partner. And, she's mad at the guy she chose for the fact that she doesn't trust men. And so that brings in divisive feelings and stuff like that, which is in competition with her other good feelings. So she's constantly in this, emotionally unstable place where some days she looks at her husband with disgust, as he lays there. And then other days she's like, oh, he's so wonderful. She has these up and down things regardless of what he's doing. Now, of course, there's game and stuff to change it, but that's what's going on here. So by effectively lifting her up, she loses the dopamine. She loses the testosterone drives that drive the sexual behavior. Transactionally, the cost benefit analysis isn't there. There's perceiving more risk for more frequent sex. And then some resentments building because of a lot of times her low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is a product of it, because if she was better than you, she wouldn't have low self-esteem, but then she wouldn't go with you. You see what I mean? If this line here was switched, if you were down here and she was up here, she wouldn't have the attraction to you in the same way, in the way that she wants. She wants to be attracted to a guy who she perceives as a little bit offering more value, genetically better, offering more value than her. And so if she sees herself as the one bringing all the value and you don't bring shit to the table, her, including sexually, including everything else, emotionally, right? You become a dependent for her. She's no longer attracted. And, so she's not, in the beginning, she's not even going for you if the line is the other way. Probably. She's definitely not. If the benefits are lower, if any benefit you bring to the table is lower than any risk or consequence of going with you, unless she's like there's something really mentally wrong with her, which is a very small percentage of women, like 1 or 2%. Well, in this way, okay. Unless there's something, she's like codependent or something crazy, right? But even with codependence, there's a perceived benefit that's higher. So even with codependent women and women who are really dysfunctional, and they go with these toxic guys who seemingly offer no value, in their minds, there's benefits. Psychologically, they're perceiving benefits. That's the problem with those psychological disorders. But anyway, so yeah, if this line was switched, she wouldn't even go with you in the beginning. So when the line is the other way, and she sees you as the higher value, and she's wanting that commitment, wanting, having high sexual desire for you, all that stuff, it's only natural for her to question her own ability to keep this thing around, right? There's level of insecurity that plays a role. We call that dread, but dread can also be a detriment. Using dread to the advantage of both you and your partner is what I teach. Okay. One of the things I teach, because she's going to have it anyway. And with dread and not having a right framework for her to use it to her advantage, if she was attracted to you to begin with, she will have that dread even when you reach up and pick her up and bring her to her level. What she's going to then do is do a bunch of things to try to boost herself up and have power. And those things will be against you. Okay. It'll be in order to feel powerful in this relationship. And then if you allow her to do those in certain divisive ways, what ends up happening is she flips it into her believing her mate value is actually higher than yours. Right. And then that's when the attraction is gone. And this happens through a process of emasculation. So I hope you guys are still with me. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and peek at the things. Yeah. So let me look at these chats for a minute and then we'll finish with the presentation here. Got a lot of talking going on. No serious questions I can see, which is fine. That's okay. So obviously I made this simple enough and good enough for you guys to follow. That's my responsibility. If you guys have any questions, throw it in there, but I don't see anything. So we'll keep going. Hopefully you guys like it. Looks like I got a fair amount of people watching. So that's a good sign, right? This is life-saving shit. It just, it's an hour and a half of your life. What the fuck do you want me to do? Right? It's like, I have to break it down. I know I break it down. I repeat myself a lot, but if I don't, people don't get it. So some people are sitting back and going, oh, okay, man, it's like the 5th time you said that. Please understand that the first time I said that or second time that you got it, there's like 10 other people who didn't fucking get it and needed me to say it 3 more times. And even after that, there'll be 10 other people who won't get it anyway. So I have to present a certain way. Trust me, I've been doing this for a while. So now you're in this relationship with her. You reached up, picked her up off the ground and said, I love you. You're my person. This effectively, because hypergamy is real and she does think this way, whether she believes it or not, she went, fuck, he must think I'm at his level because he picked me. Uh-oh, I wasn't I don't know if I am really at his level. I'm not sure if I'm at his level or not. I have insecurity now. Like, what do I do? You know what I mean? And so then what ends up happening? Shit test, right? Okay. Now the shit tests start happening. Now she starts laying out her demands. Now she starts bringing drama because she's unsure. When she was happy and crying at the engagement ring and, going down the aisle saying, I do, for those married guys. She had the big party, all the emotions. She wasn't thinking, oh, this is some schlub I'm settling with. She was in love with that guy. She trusted everything about the day of, not every woman, but assuming the day went well and things are going well, like on the honeymoon, she's got all the trust for this guy, right? Hasn't kicked in yet that he lifted her up with this commitment. And once that starts to kick in, she doesn't trust. She doesn't trust herself and she doesn't trust you or the guy. And it's nothing you've done to be untrustworthy. This is just the nature of what happens in the mind. Okay. And it just is. All right. Because we're not designed to last longer than a couple years in relationships. We're not designed to fly either, but we fly in airplanes all the time, right? So I'm not saying you can't have a happy relationship, but we certainly had to do a lot of research and development to figure out how to get up in the sky and fly places. Same with your relationship. All right. Because you're not designed. Well, why is it like this? Because you're not fucking designed to live a long time with the same person. That's why. But that doesn't mean you can't have great relationships, right? So I'm helping you with that. You just got to learn the science, right? You got to learn the skills. So back to it. All right. Part of this process. So what happens is you can break down every shit test, every piece of drama, every problem that she starts all of a sudden happening, including the lack of sexual frequency and things revolving around that. What you can now bring is, what is that are all amounting to is a tests. And the test, we can boil it down to this: emasculation. Okay. All of these tests are either her trying to emasculate you. Well, two things: either her trying to emasculate you to see if it works, or her trying to see if, you'll have that comfort, if she can get taken care of by you. So it's either a comfort test, like, well, he take care of me, really? Because, I do see him as that man. Can I trust him to take care of me? Right. Or can I trust his leadership and his abilities? Those are the two things. Can I trust his masculinity, his leadership and abilities, or can I trust his, willingness to care for me? All right. Comfort or whatever. So there's a lot of ways to break down shit tests, but in the simplest, format, we can look at it like that. So now you're vacuuming the house to try to reduce her stress, because stress is lower, or sex is not as much because she's so stressed out now. Well, fuck. She wasn't that stressed out, a year and a half ago when life was harder. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when life may have been arguably harder, she was banging you all the time. Now all of a sudden she's too stressed out, right? And you got to vacuum the house more. You see, all of these reasons she doesn't feel sexually, wanting to be engaged with you sexually, they all get externalized to you as the man. That's part of this testing of your leadership and masculinity. And she'll either emasculate you because you allow for that to happen, or, you'll demonstrate something otherwise. But it's all leadership. It's lack of trust in herself. And she starts now taking you, she starts causing you drama, causing you problems, right? You're trying to do more and she's doing less. And what ends up happening for you guys who don't know these things, because you don't know it, you're just doing the best you can, is your perceived mate value, which at once in the beginning was super high, now gets down here. Now she starts to perceive, you just reached up, pulled her up to your level. She didn't trust herself there. She starts doing a lot of things within the relationship to test. And because uncertainty creates these tests. And when you start failing those tests, okay, and you don't have frame, then she starts, when you don't bring the leadership and masculinity that she expects and hopes for, then she has to then bring that herself to the relationship. And when she has to bring the lack of leadership and lack of masculinity that you're bringing to the table, when she has to do that, what happens is she perceives her mate value is higher. And once she perceives her mate value is higher, sexual attraction is gone now. All right. So now it's purely transactional at that point. So this is what happens 2 years into a marriage or cohabitation relationship. The guy's trying to do everything and finding himself in a place of discontent more and more and more. She starts, it ends up being a transactional equation. These are all the benefits I want from this relationship. What's the least amount of work I can do to get it? And that's when you're down to once a month sex, to once every couple months, to sleeping in separate bedrooms, to living separately, all that bullshit. And you're just like, going to work. I'll pay the bills. I'll take care of the kids. I'll clean the kitchen. I'll make the dinner. You're doing all the shit that you've been told that'll make you into a good man. A lot of my clients, that's what they do to find her sexually unattracted. And she'll only drip out sex as often as she and it's her emotions that tell her to do it. Her emotions kick in. A lot of times it turns literally into a logical equation. All right, we just had sex. I'm going to count down on my calendar now. Okay, we just banged in January. He should be good till February. Like they literally just have it, a countdown in their heads. It becomes part of the transaction of most marriages and most serious cohabitating relationships. All right. And it starts from, and this is why hypergamy plays the role, because why is her sexual switch off? And why is she disgusted by her man? Well, because she emasculated him. He allowed it because he didn't have, for a number of reasons. He's trying to do better, trying to be a good man. So he put up with it and allowed it. And now her attraction is less because she feels like my mate value and my value in this relationship must be more. When you talk to people with bad marriages, bad relationships, and they're not going well and the sex is low, the woman will often talk about how she does everything, how she brings more value to the relationship. She doesn't say it like that, but she'll be like, I do this, I do that. He doesn't do anything. I blah, 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 blah. It's this massive ego that she has, thinking that she brings all this shit to the table and he doesn't do anything, bring anything to the table. So why would I want to have sex with him? Like, right? That becomes the argument. And, we can put it on women because it is them that's doing it. Like, this is what chicks do. This is what chicks are doing. Okay. This is what they're wired to do. This is what happens. Watch the video again. I'll break it up into chapters, put it on, 1.2 or 1.5 speed. So, because I know it's long. All right. And watch it on repeat. This is what they do. Okay. But I'm not going to shame women for it. It's how they're wired. What prevents it from happening this way is one of two things. Either a girl, a light bulb goes on for fucking girl, regardless of her husband, and she realizes she's fucking her life up and that she's got to do something different to change this dynamic. And then she starts doing that, right? That can spark some change. But that's not enough. All right? Because the unfortunate thing for her and the fortunate thing for you, I think it's a fortunate thing, it's a good thing, is although it may be her doing, her mechanisms that's creating this, because if it was a guy, if she had, if her brain worked like a guy, you guys would just be fucking all the time. And this would never be a thing, right? Because of the way her brain works and because of the nature of relationships, period, that you cannot change. Okay. This is a thing that her brain will do unless you do things differently with your frame. All right. You can't get away from it. She can't really get away from it. She can try, but she can only get away from it and have a happy relationship if you participate by taking the leadership and taking charge, And if a woman says the words come out of her mouth, let him be in charge, then you're not in charge. But really it's submitting. All right. So, generally speaking, we can get into language, but generally speaking, she has got to submit. And what it really means is surrender. I did a video on surrendering. Maybe I'll throw it in the cards for you guys that haven't seen it yet. She has to surrender to the relationship. So do you. And a natural polarity will occur when everyone, says, fuck it, stops trying to protect themselves and just trust their partner, even if it's blind trust. What ends up happening is she falls into a more submissive role. He falls into a more dominant leadership role. She's not fighting his dominance to try to, maintain power. He's not trying to, manipulate or control her in any way to maintain power. And everybody ends up falling into a happy place. But you actually have to, it takes mental and emotionally elevating yourself to be able to, surrender to that relationship. Pick the right person and surrender to it, both of you guys. But at any rate, so there's things you can do though, that whether she's surrender to cause her surrender, you won't have, and you have to surrender too. Both of you have to do it. And you got to go see that video if you don't know what I mean. All right. So let's go into solutions. All right. So that is the path, and it happens like 99% of the time to a degree. Why do I say that? Because sex is out of the relation. Sex is lower, considerably lower in marriages and in cohabitating relationships after each once that decision is made and things are going after. In first year's worse usually than second and third, things usually are going downhill. All right, statistically speaking, it's only certain relationships that are really anomalies that maintain a high level of sexual attraction and desire where they're having that. That's if you're in a relationship and you've been in a cohabitating or a marital relationship, we could say something that is, pretty serious, especially monogamous relationship for more than a couple years. And I don't mean like a relationship you've been with her for 2 years, but she doesn't live with you. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe, but it's when you really have intertwined your life resources. If you're in that relationship and the sex is as high as it was in the beginning, and you guys super satisfied after from 3 to 5 years in, you're an anomaly. Like, you're a very, very small percentage. Like, we're talking maybe one couple percentages. You know what I mean? So you understand that. So the rest of you guys, like, you think you're not going to end up there. If you commit to a woman, you're going to end up there. All right, period. That's your fate. Now, I'm not saying don't commit. I'm saying if you want the commitment, take it and do it. But here's the thing, because if you don't commit, most of the time you will lose her. I don't care what these guys on the internet say. All right, eventually she'll move on, usually, which is fine, whatever. But if you end up doing the commitment, okay, what's going on is here. I'll fucking stop sharing for a second. Wait, if you end up doing the commitment, all right, you have to do things differently to make yourself that, 1 to, let's say, 5% or whatever, where the sex is good, high, and you're getting everything you want out of it. All right, so that's the answer. There's things you have to do, and you have to pick someone, a woman, who's capable of doing that with you. Okay, because not every woman will be able to work through their underlying mammalian brain drives to create the conditions to where they're not using sex as a tool for power over you, where they can surrender to the relationship, stop, instead of trying to fight your dominance and leadership, being happy to support your dominance, leadership, and be a good partner to you, right? To be a good companion to you. Okay. You got to pick the right girl, right person who can do that. And then you got to be the right person who can lead. And that's with your frame. I work with guys for a year on how to do this because it takes time and it takes an entire transformation for how you see the world. And with your relationship with your girl, I recommend, by the way, prior to committing, because that's when her dopamine is going to be high, right? So prior to committing, you want to create these conditions so that her frame and how she sees the world, how she sees relationships matches yours. But you got to change yourself first, though. And just consuming content isn't enough. You have to actually do things out in the world too. And because knowing it up here is only one dimension. It has to show up behaviorally. With your behaviors and your emotional reactions, you have to operate differently to be that leadership, we'll say masculine male, alpha male person that doesn't fall to emasculation, that handles her testing appropriately, that's able to build her self-esteem, but not in a narcissistic way where she, steamrolls over you in the relationship and then thinks she's better than you, but where she sees herself as, how she should see herself, which is a capable, good person who's capable of being a partner to you, right? And like, all of these things need to be there. So let's go into solutions. And then let me look at comments here real quick. And again, let's see. What do we got here? What do we got here? Content top notch, and you break it down in detail. Way better than too long didn't read. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. And I will have chapter breaks, but that's the thing, man. Like, listen, I'm not trying to be, holy fuck, I'm going on 2 hours here, but you know, I try. I know I need to make some of these shorter. My other channel, we're gonna have some shorter 20-minute videos. But the reality is, though, these are complex. Topics. You know what I mean? Thank you very much. Happy New Year. These are complex topics. Human behavior has layers, and they operate in a system. So, you know, you're not going to get a few platitudes and then do shit right. You're not going to get that. Even in understanding this, most people do not understand this shit because it requires you to use your brain and actually think through how things connect. And that's going to take some time in a lecture. You know what I mean? And so there isn't an elevator pitch. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's in order to understand these things, we got to get into the topic, period. And so those of you guys who can do that, and it's easy to do while you're driving, you know, you can throw it on in the background instead of some music. I mean, this is a podcast format for that reason. All right. So I'll get into solutions here, and then we'll be closing soon. But so the solutions, what we're looking at, first solution here, and this is from the guy perspective. Actually, women have solutions that they need to do too. You're going to set the conditions of that, though, as the man. And the first thing is the frame. Okay, so you have to change your framework, mental framework around sex. Sex needs to be seen as a critical component of a happy relationship. Sex needs to be something that you should want to do, but also, yes, as something as you have to do. If you stop wanting to do it, you need to start figuring out why and fixing that. That's you as a guy, that's her as a woman. All right. And that's important. And if your partner stops wanting to do it, it's not just one or the other. Both of you figure out and immediately working on where the disconnect is, what's missing. Because if you're not having frequent and we'll say good or happy, intense sexual relationship, if we're not having a sexual relationship that's, you know, very, let's say, not just satisfying, but very rewarding, we'll say, and also frequent and rewarding, you are not going to have the love chemicals and the bonding chemicals that you'll need to have. You won't have it. Okay. And so she's got to see sex as something you share. She's got to see that the power that she has in sex is in being very good to you with that and being good to herself and having intense experiences, blowing your mind, you know, frequently giving you satisfaction orgasms. She needs to see that as the place her power lies. If she sees as withholding sex as a means, as a tool for power and manipulation, then that's not, she's saying sex is something she uses. So sex is something we share, not something we use. So if she is, you know, seeing like I'm going to withhold or reward with sex, she's using sex then as a tool. Sex is not a tool. Sex is something you share. All right. And that's the frame that needs to change. And the power in sex is in sharing it in a way that is, you know, makes your partner happy and in a way that's frequent. That's where the power of sex is. Okay. That framework, mental framework and model needs to be instilled into her schemas. All right. And you need to have that framework. Okay. And be consciously aware. The other part of framework is accountability. Once again, she is in control of the switch that goes on or off for her, believe it or not. Now, emotions and neurochemicals and conditions drive that, but she can decide, well, you know what? I'm sexually open or sexually closed. I talked about that in a Seduction Matrix. I talked about that like a couple years ago. All right, that there's that switch. It's sexually open, sexually closed, and she has some degree, or quite a bit of degree of control over that, and she has quite a bit of a degree of control of sexual frequency and giving to her partner. All of those things. There needs to be accountability. When women sit there and go, well, he's not doing enough and he's this, he's that. He talked mean to me. He's he's just using me for sex, but then he's not going to give me the things that I want if I don't, if I choose not to have sex with him. Like, this is not the language of a woman who's taking any accountability for herself. So accountability is critical, and a lot of guys will jump in right now and say in comments and in chat and be like, women are not accountable, blah, blah. I'm not talking about holding women accountable in general. Like, I'm just talking about a mental framework of accountability in your relationship where she understands she's responsible for herself and her behavior, and you are responsible for yours, and that you guys, there's no blame shifting. Okay. And that's to include, she is responsible for sexual frequency and creating desire in you and wanting to make you happy, right? That's something she's responsible for. It's not a condition, okay, of what you do. It's not something she's, you have to do A in order for her to do B. No, she is with you. She is responsible for that. And if she doesn't want to, then she is responsible for that too. And she has to figure it out. All right. Now, maybe, some of that is you're not that sexually skilled and you need to work on your skills, or there's this and that, the other. Yeah, there might be things you need to do to help that along, but she needs to be the one to take responsibility for it. Because look, we're not talking about sex has been bad the whole relationship. Sex was fine prior to her getting all the rewards and the prizes, huh? Right? She was eagerly having sex prior to getting all the prizes. So don't listen to her bullshit when she turns around and says, well, I don't know, you're not as exciting for me now. Well, fuck, I was exciting 3 years ago. Why am I not exciting now? Right? That should be your question to yourself. And the reason why is because she's bullshitting herself and she's lying. And that's what I mean by accountability. Okay. So, it's not your skill. Okay. It's not these other things. She has to be, all of a sudden, well, I have all these childhood traumas around sex and blah, blah. Really? Well, her childhood trauma didn't step in when she was banging, the bad boys and the chads when she was younger. Her childhood trauma didn't step in the beginning of your relationship. Now, all of a sudden, she has trauma. A couple of years after she's gotten the prizes and the rewards, she's got trauma now. Like, no, don't listen to it. It's all bullshit. And she's bullshitting and lying. She's lying to herself too. All right. How about fucking, like, you're not doing enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. Life's too hard. I'm too stressed out. Life was hard. Life was probably more stressful before you guys got together. There were all of those reasons existed before. So don't let her bullshit herself. It's always of her trying to get away from that pesky accountability that women don't like. Don't let her do it. Okay. You have to have a framework of accountability in your relationship as a man. There's ways of doing that as a man, but that's that's get on the email list if you want to learn more. All right. Confidence in herself, outcomes in you. You don't want a woman. There's an idea of toxic game where we bring a woman's confidence down. You don't want that. Okay. There's false confidence and ego protection, arrogance. We don't want arrogance in a woman. Arrogance is an absolute killer of attraction, of a woman being attractive, and a killer of relationships. But you don't want her to be low confidence. A high confident woman, she's confident in her decisions of picking you. She's confident in her abilities to handle a problem if something doesn't go well. She's confident, therefore, on outcomes, because if the outcome is bad, she has confidence in herself that, okay, I can weather the storm. You know what I mean? And so if the outcome is good, then great. But if it's not good, she is confident in herself. And then she's confident in you because she trusts you. You want to build and support confidence in those three areas: herself and her decisions and her abilities, outcomes in general, as well as her ability and your ability as a partner, as companions to weather those storms, and also her confidence in you and her trust in you. When she has confidence and trust, sex is a lot easier and a lot more frequent for that to happen, because part of the reason why she's using it for power is a lack of trust in one of these three areas. All right. So that's a component. It's not the only thing, because if I just say, oh, women just need to, if they're confident in themselves, then the sex will be there. Oh, that's actually bullshit, because a lot of women are confident in themselves and also see them as hypergamously better than their men, see themselves in charge, and all of that confidence is there and they love it. They're drunk on that confidence. And that man that she's with is effectively a slave. She's letting him lead. I'll let you lead today, honey. Like, that's not the kind of confidence. So confidence by itself is not what I mean. Okay. Because there's a certain type of ego protecting confidence, as well as having such a level of confidence where I would say almost an arrogance and not seeing your what you're bringing. You know what I mean? That's not a good. So confidence by itself makes arrogant women. Okay. So we want also the hypergamous understanding of it's the confidence in you. The confidence outcomes has to be there along with herself, not this empowered woman crap where I can do anything. I'm this, I'm that, I'm in charge. That's not going to make for a great sexual relationship. In fact, that will completely dry your bedroom up. She needs to be confident in herself, but also confident in outcomes in general, right? Because she trusts also not just herself, but she trusts you. She has to be more confident, in fact, in you than she is in herself. But the part of herself is being confident in her choice to pick you, right? And so that's why that's so important. Your boundaries and standards. All right. So so your frame is there. Part of your frame too is your boundaries and your standards. Don't allow her to emasculate you. If you have to have boundaries, have standards in your relationship, and you have to be those boundaries and standards are more important than her feelings. Your boundaries, your standards are more important than her feelings. Okay. It's also more important than the relationship, to be honest, because there is no relationship that you're going to want without boundaries and standards. There is no frame without boundaries and standards. She only emasculates you because you allow it. And women can be very, though, manipulative in how they do it. They're very tricky, and they force you into these scenarios. This is why your game has to be good, so you're not in that scenario. But at the end of the day, even if your game sucks, if you can just have the ability to say no and put your foot down, it'll get you through a lot. Okay. So that is another main component. She's going to have times in the relationship, especially in a monogamous relationship, where she thinks she's your fucking equal and she doesn't see your mate value. And because you've picked her up to that level. So she is going to have uncertainty and she is going to test. And when she tests, your boundaries and your standards are what causes you to pass and handle those tests. Having a confidence in yourself, also in your abilities to have those boundaries and standards and have frame, is what's going to keep your emotions in check too as a man. Then the last thing is dread. And I'm just going to say dread, and simply not the dread that most people think, okay? But just you have a willingness to walk fearlessly without her. You need that as a leader in your relationship. I'm not saying you threaten the relationship. I'm not saying you don't want to be with her. I'm not saying you are all constantly leveraging, whatever, but your willingness to walk away if she is going to continually, cross boundaries, continually not meet standards, continually be arrogant, continually to leverage sex, you need to be able to walk away fucking period. You know what I mean? End of story. I'm going to find it. So my Twitter is a dumpster fire. Stop sharing. So my Twitter is dumpster fire, but we will see if I can find my one tweet that got a lot of people upset. but really it shouldn't be something to make anybody upset. But a gynocentric social order puts you in a place of, you know, wanting to be a male slave to a woman's sensibilities and not to put your needs anywhere up in the forefront. I'm looking for this tweet right now. There. We're getting there. We're getting there. But anyways, if you have any questions, though, throw them in the chat now because we are going to close this soon. So here's the tweet. And I had quoted Pearl from Just Pearly Things on her tweet because it was right. She asked a question from your personal experience. What percentage of married friends are in a sexless marriage? You know, it says, please only answer if you're 35 and over. And it was overwhelmingly, but this is actual data with real research and studies. Twitter research isn't usually real. Okay. Just FYI, but it's good. It gives you it gives you a picture, you know what I mean? But even when they do real controlled studies with doing the statistical trials and stuff the right way, it overwhelmingly shows, especially over the age of 35, there's so many people in sexless marriages. It's so high. And my tweet that got this controversy and also got, let's see how many. My tweet that got almost, 155,000 views and over 200 some thousand reposts was, I said, data shows consistently it's between 20 and 25%, with prevalence going up with age and time. So 20 to 25%. So anywhere between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 marriages are sexless, meaning they're only having sex once a month or less than that. So then my next thing is men need to have a strict policy. Fuck or get out. I don't care if you have a toddler. I don't care if you're 25 years in a relationship. If you aren't fucking, and it's not for medical, there's no medical reasons involved in this, then you aren't in a relationship. Empathetic women will cry and act like abused children when you express this view. Screw them. These same women will turn right around and cheat on you or divorce you and bang another dude on the way out when they've had every excuse not to with you. They gave you every excuse not to have sex on the way out the door. 75% of these divorces, right, initiated by women, they're banging somebody else or banging someone else before that ink is dry on that divorce paperwork. All right. Not every situation, but most. And the only way you stop this is by letting her know that you will under no circumstance accept being emasculated into a sexless slave. Don't leave it up to her. This is up to you as a man to set the standard. She needs to know 100% that in due time, you will leave her or change the terms of the relationship to fuck other women if she stops wanting to be intimate with you. Period. Men, if you're in a relationship and you're not having sex at a reasonable frequency and level, it's just you're not having good sex in your relationship, it's slavery. Slavery for you. Fuck or leave. It's that or slavery. I can't be more clear on this. That was my tweet. A lot of people liked it. A lot of people didn't. A lot of women agreed and a lot of women disagreed. But it's true. You can't accept that for yourself. 20 to 25% of you in marriages are accepting that. It's probably higher than that even for just if we start to include just long-term cohabitating relationships. That's the sexless. That's outright sexless. The most of you, the rest of the 75%, I would say probably 70%, as men, you've accepted a low frequency, low vibration, low happiness, low intensity sexual relationship with your partner. You've accepted that after a certain period of time. And that is going to be most of you listening to this. That is most of the guys out there. This is why you need to share this, even though it's a couple hours. Share it, get it out there, put it out there. I'm going to chop it. I'll chop it up into shorts, maybe, whatever, for people who have attention span problems. But you need to send this out, because if you are accepting that, you're accepting slavery as a man. That's it. You know, and if you want to be a man slave and labor and work hard and cry about it, I mean, because you're doing it to yourself. Nobody's doing it to you. Okay. If you want to create your own prison to go live in your own prison. I will tell you this, though, that woman of yours that you think wouldn't fuck you over will. I know guys who were married 30 plus years in their retirement, and the old lady goes, you know, I can get all the awards and prizes, get half his shit, keep the house. I don't have kids anymore. I can drink a box of wine every night and never have to work again off of his money, and never have to have sex with him, never have to talk to him, nothing. Yeah, I'll do that divorce at 65. I know guys who were working. They had to go back to work, all right, in the DOD world and in private sector, had to go back to work because they married some woman, took care of her, and she took the shit and left. And I guarantee there is a sexless or low sex, low vibration relationship going on for a long time before that happened. One that she created and he allowed. These guys are, unfortunately, without realizing it, became slaves to these women. You guys, it's up to you. Okay. If you don't have the courage to get off the plantation or to get out of the prison, whatever analogy you want to look at, get out of the prison you've created for yourself. If you don't have the courage to do that, you're not going to have the happy life you want. All right. When I say fuck or get out, I don't mean you're just putting ultimatums down. I gave an entire presentation. All right. You're refusing and not accepting that paradigm as a man. Eventually it may mean she does get out, but you're using your frame. You're not allowing emasculation. You're picking the right girl. Okay. And you're doing a lot of things to make it right. Because if you don't actively do it and make the hard choice to say, hey, no, we're not doing that right now. Oh, you have a grocery list of needs right now? Well, I'm working. I'll get to you when I'm in a couple hours. Whatever. You can't say no. You can't set standards. You can't set boundaries. You won't be in charge of your relationship, and she won't be attracted to you. It will fail, and you will be in a prison that you've created for yourself. Thanks again.